Hi, I'm Coach Tracey Knight, and many of you probably know by now that I focus on helping you fix broken relationships at work, at home, and in the bedroom. Because, quite honestly, we know when our relationships simply are strained and not working. And so the question is, are we brave enough to really do something about it? So in today's segment, I want to talk about conflict and facing conflict. Facing conflict. You know, when I give people my standardized social and emotional intelligence profile, I assess 26 competencies there, and I want to talk a little bit about why I assess it, but I assess 26 competencies, and what I find is that there are two areas that people typically are most deficient in. One is in their personal power. That is that sense of confidence, that sense of feeling like you can be your full self, that you can speak your truth unapologetically. But I also find that people oftentimes are deficient in the area of conflict management. And it's mainly because we don't like to face conflict. So, rewinding this back, how did we get here? And what is my philosophy? I've got to set the tone for you so that you understand what it is that I believe and how this really applies to the work we're doing around learning how to face conflict. So I believe that life is a game that we all play. You are the all-star player in your game. This game is played from the time you're born until the time that you die. You can't get around it because by virtue of you being here, you are playing the game called your life. Now, the object of the game, because all games have objectives to them, the object of the game is for you to create a life that feels authentic. That means you can show up as your whole self. A life that is inspired, that means it's in spirit. That means that you jump out of bed each day feeling like you are not only, like on purpose, but you also feel like the life that you've created, the situations, the relationships that you've created in your life, you've allowed into your life, inspire you to go further, to push beyond your limitations. You also are trying to create a life that feels connected. Because clearly, it's 7 billion people on the planet, y'all. So clearly, we're not meant to live alone, right? So our job is to create connection with people. Now, what is the challenge here? The challenge is that we're supposed to be in connection with people, but sometimes that creates conflict. So going back to this concept of the game, part of any game is facing obstacles. So in our game called life, your job is to not only create those objectives, but it's also to be able to be your whole self, face your whole self, learn how to adapt and to pivot in the face of inevitable and ever-changing circumstances, because change is the only constant that we have on this planet. Now, very quickly here, unlike other world-class games, there are no competitors, even though sometimes it feels that way. There really are no competitors. It is just you. You come in alone, you leave out alone. But in the meantime, you are playing the game called your life in tandem with other people. Those people are mirror reflections for you. They show you who you are. Hence, this is where conflict comes in. Okay? Because, of course, in Tracey land, I am always right. I am the mayor, the judge, the juror, law enforcement, the prosecutor, the defense attorney. I am always right until I bump up against my sweetie or until I bump up against a client or something like that that shows me a reflection of how I communicate. Can I build trust? Can I foster bonds? They are showing me a mirror of myself. And then I have the choice as to whether or not I want to learn how to navigate through that in a much more effective way. So what I teach my clients, and I'm going to be teaching you here today, I think that our secret weapon to winning this game, because when we're athletes in this game, we got to have some skills. So the skills that we need to develop are those 26 competencies of social and emotional intelligence. And as you will start to see on the screen here, emotional intelligence is basically our ability to monitor who we are, how we show up, what it is that we're feeling in the present moment, and to be able to choose to respond rather than react to situations. It is also behavioral control, our ability to manage ourselves in our life. It's also social intelligence, which means that we can sort of monitor and be attuned to other people empathically. We can also pay attention to an organization's culture and be able to fit in and navigate in that culture without losing a piece of ourselves. And that's where things like communication and building trust and foster bonds and navigating change really come into play. So we focus on the 26 core competencies of EI and bolstering our EQ because all the research shows us that EQ matters twice as much as your IQ when it comes to determining the quality and the caliber of a leader. And quite honestly, 90% of the most effective leaders on this planet historically have had a very high EQ. And besides, they tend to get paid a heck of a lot more. In fact, about $30,000 more than their average counterpart. And it's mainly because leadership is not a title. Leadership is a way of being. Leadership is our ability to get people to do what we need for them to do on their own accord. So that means that you need some EQ competencies like communication, interpersonal skills, conflict management in order to do that. So today what I want to talk about is one of those key skills, which is being able to effectively negotiate and navigate through conflict and being able to resolve it. So what I am clear about is that when a person is without that competency, meaning it's deficient in some way, you will find that they are very uncomfortable and want to avoid conflict. I find that people 9 times out of 10, you either are very aggressive in conflict or you want to avoid it all along. And I want you to tune into some of my follow-up segments to this because I'm going to be talking about those different personality types. When you are lacking in this competence, you lack consideration and tact in voicing your disagreement. You may do it in a form of hostility, or you may do it in a way that is manipulative in some way. You may see other people as opponents, opposed to being a person who really is showing a reflection of you. There really are no competitors in this game. They really are not. And they do not see or propose areas of common ground. They don't try to find common ground. They're stuck in their own way of being. So they tend to blame others and fail to see another person's point of view. They may feel like something is diminishing them if a person doesn't agree with them. Now, when you start developing this competence, you basically can handle difficult individuals. And we all have seen those difficult individuals, especially in the workplace. And you can spot potential conflict and you get ahead of it. You don't just wait for the conflict to overcome the relationship, to suppress the relationship, to destroy the relationship. No, you start bringing those disagreements to the forefront and start communicating openly without escalating them. You also encourage debate and open discussion around things. You draw all parties into the conversation because you don't feel diminished because somebody else has a different point of view. You actually end up orchestrating win-win agreements. And isn't that what we all want? So the question that I want to leave with you today, there are 4 of them, right? And I really want you to think about this, especially in the workplaces, which is what I want to focus on today. What does it mean to get along in the workplace? Like, what does that really mean to you? I also want you to think about what inhibits people from getting along in the workplace. Like, what is standing in the way of people getting along in the workplace? Here's the pivotal question. What did you personally learn about conflict growing up? Because that is going to define how you relate to conflict today. So for some people, they may have been in a household where they were told to be silent and unseen. And because they learned to shrink back, when they face conflict in the workplace, they will naturally shrink back. For other people, and I'll give myself as an example, my family, when we would travel down south to South Carolina from Cincinnati to go see my family, we always would go to the big house, our house where the main house, and we would have these riveting debates about different things. So I was little, but I could see the adults like bantering and arguing back and forth and screaming at each other, but it was all in love, right? Even though people were expressing their point of view and they're animated, you see how animated I am now. And so in growing up, I embrace that. So when I see argument or debate, I sort of lean into that because that has been part of my constitution, right? So I don't feel intimidated by that. Where other people, if you grew up in a household where that escalated into abuse, you may recoil back from that. So what did you learn about conflict? Did you learn that you should stay silent? Did you learn that your voice didn't matter? Did you learn that you could be fully expressed? So how did you learn to navigate conflict? Did your family have conversations to welcome your opinion and your perspective and to not judge you around it? All of that is going to determine how you navigate conflict at work. It's also how you navigate conflict at home and in the bedroom. Now, here's my last question. How does it influence how you relate to and deal with difficult situations today? So when you reflect on that, how do you see yourself showing up now so that when that colleague that is perceivably that difficult person shows up, how do you see yourself interacting with them? What I know, a lot of my clients, some of them go and lock themselves in the office. They're kind of like, I'm not even going to deal with this person. I'm just going to come here. I'm just going to do my job. And that is it, because I just cannot deal with them. Well, that conflict is not going to go away. That is just your default mechanism of how you navigate conflict. So I want you to pay attention to that. I also want to point out to you that what getting along is and what it is not. So getting along does not mean that you avoid or get into denial. I've seen so many clients, because I do a lot of work in organizational development, where they are hoping that the person retires soon. They are hoping that the problem just goes away. They're telling other people, like if you're a leader and you're just like, well, just ignore them. You know how they are. No, that thing wreaks havoc in the whole workplace. So being in denial, avoiding it, does not constitute facing conflict. Competing, the team I or the team us. So getting along, it is very difficult to work as a cohesive team if you go into it with the concept of team I or even team us. What we really want to work on is team we. There's a big distinction between those. Team I is just me. I'm going to do my work. As long as I get my stuff done, that's all that matters. Well, the team can't, one piece does not make a picture, okay? Team us looks like my department is winning. My department is winning. I don't know what y'all doing over there. Well, again, the organization cannot achieve its mission if we're only focused on the finance department or the marketing department or the program department, okay? Or the product development department. It all works together for the good. All wheels must be functioning on the car to make it move. And then finally, it does not mean compromising to your detriment. Getting along doesn't mean people-pleasing. That is a codependent pattern. People-pleasing to the point where you don't get what you want. Your voice is not heard. You compromise on everything. You're not fully being your most authentic self. Now, getting along does mean being attuned and building rapport with various people. People of different personalities. That is a true test of your leadership abilities. That even if you don't agree with people's approach, can you still have a relationship with that person? It is dealing with conflict head on and proactively having difficult conversations. Not all conversations make us feel warm and fuzzy, but I guarantee you one thing, when you learn how to have crucial conversations without breaking the relationship, you have just leveled up as a leader and you have just leveled up as a human being. Using diplomacy, tact, and interpersonal skills to ease transactions and relationships. Everybody is trying to play for a win for themselves. When you learn how to understand what their win is and you understand your win and you can negotiate to get to that center, you are a powerhouse. And then finally, working with others in the pursuit of collective goals, because that's basically what organizations are designed to do. We all have individual goals and we have departmental goals, but when we put those goals together, that's what helps us to achieve the mission. Now, a couple consequences I want to point out to you before I break here. Consequences of conflict, negative consequences. If you don't learn to face conflict head on, you're going to start creating a lot of barriers and breakdowns in your relationships. And let me tell you something, leaving the organization is not always the answer because you're not going to do nothing but go out and find another place that's exactly like it. You may disrupt your work and the pleasure that you have at work. It can be very expensive to constantly have turnover as an individual and as an organization, and it may cause people to actually leave work that they really enjoy or to make bad decisions. Now, the positive consequences of facing the conflict is you do get this opportunity to help other people see a bigger picture, other perspectives, broaden. This is how creativity is really evoked, is being able to see other people's opinions and perspectives, and then to be able to create something out of that. When you face conflict, you also clear the air and get rid of the stress. Yes, it's a stress management technique. It increases our power, our confidence, and our sense of self-worth when we learn how to face conflict. And finally, it leads to better decision making. So now, what I want you to do is to stay tuned, because in the next episode, I'm going to talk about the 6 stages of conflict and what causes them to escalate. So stay tuned, and I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel. I want to remind you to like us, tag us, and share us with other people who really need to hear this information in order for them to create the life that you want. I'm Coach Tracey Knight, and I want to remind you that today is the day that we begin to take back, transform, and win at the game called life.